Nau mai ki tēnei hui o tēnei rā. Welcome to our council meeting for the 27th of September. It's my pleasure to welcome, of course, our public and especially our new Lakes Community Board member who we will be officially signing her declaration in this meeting as well. Before we start, I'd just like to remind you all if you could please have your mobile phones on silent or turned off. We will take a morning break sometime this morning. We'll see how we go. And we also have this being live streamed. Before we get underway, I'd like to please ask Councillor Barker to open up our meeting with the karakia.
Mōrena tātou, tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, humie, huie, tae kie.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call for apologies. I have one from Councillor Brown. Councillor Kaifong.
An apology for Councillor Waru.
Thank you. And I am not too sure if Councillor Kiriopa is still overseas, so I'll put an apology for her at this stage. So that's Councillor Brown, Councillor Waru and Councillor Kiriopa. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Maxwell, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Were there any declarations of interest this morning? There appear to be none. Any urgent items not on the agenda? There appear to be none. We now move to the confirmation of the minutes. So may I please have a mover and a seconder for the motion that the minutes of the council meeting held on 23rd of August 23 be confirmed as true and correct record. That's moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Kaifong. Just check if there were any corrections to that before I put it to the vote. No, I now put that motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now on our agenda today, we'll start off with a presentation. We'll then move to the declaration of Jennifer Rothwell, and then of course we'll carry on with our council agenda. So it's now my pleasure to invite Councillor Patterson to speak to and present a video that he has in regards to the Local Government New Zealand Conference. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Morena councillors, staff, good to be here again. Welcome to our guests. Yes, so I was very lucky and I'm very grateful to Council and the ratepayers for sending me to the Local Government Conference earlier this year. At first I was a little reticent, even though I was honoured to be asked. I was just concerned about the amount of money that it would cost versus the benefits of my attendance. And I'm so glad that I went. I believe it actually, most conferences you go to, you're lucky if you come away with one thing. That conference gave me so many new things that I believe I can bring to the table and help move Rotorua forward. Now, I've got a very short window of time to do this, so I can't go through everything, but I do hope you did read my report, which I outlined the highlights for me. But there's one person, one presenter who stood out, a lady by the name of Sophie Howe. So she was the first ever Commissioner for Future Generations for Wales. So it was quite a big deal to have her brought out to New Zealand for this conference. In her earlier life, she came from a pretty tough background. I won't go into detail, but just it was tough. There are a lot of similarities to the stories that we hear right here in Rotorua with her background. She became the head. She rose through her life and became the head of the regional police department for her area. And then she became a councillor like us, and then she became the Future Generations Commissioner for all of Wales. So her presentation focused on decision making, how we as elected members can make better decisions for not just what we are in front of us, but actually long-term generational decisions, mokopuna decisions as we like to call them. So without further ado, I'll let Isabel start the video, and I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Communities want us to do the things that will support their well-being. They want us to focus on the things that will make life worthwhile. And of course, this is absolutely the core business for local government. And, you know, this isn't a particular criticism. This is because we're constantly, you know, trying to keep up with demand. Is we only intervene, you know, when something has happened. We park our ambulance at the bottom of a cliff and we wait for someone to fall off, and then we kind of patch them up and treat them and so on, instead of putting a fence at the top of a cliff. But imagine a scenario where, you know, by 2036 we've got double the number of over 65s who have not grown up in an environment which creates a healthy environment, which enables them to make good and healthy life choices. What does that mean in terms of demand on our public services, and how are we not just going to keep on responding to that demand, but get up front now with the kind of, well, the kids, the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, to try and turn some of that tap off in the future. But here's the really interesting parts, I think, for local government. 29% of what makes a difference to life expectancy is about your living conditions, the quality of your housing, the quality of your local environment, how safe is your community, and 19% is about social and human capital, the quality of your relationships. Is there a community in the area that you live? Do you have a sense of agency in terms of being able to influence that community? Now, what that says to me is that more than 50% of what makes a difference on life expectancy is kind of the core business of local government. If you are building infrastructure, you need to be thinking about that, how that infrastructure is relating back to those living conditions, creating green communities, creating connected communities. Actually, it relates back to that hard metric of how long are you going to live. But during my time here, I've also seen some brilliant frameworks developed by Maori communities, which covers spirit, the natural world. It covers a human domain. It focuses on joining things up, on creating strong relationships, on guardianship, on care and respect, dare I say, kindness to the next generation. So I think that there are opportunities. You actually have the wisdom here in Te Māori. You have the wisdom in terms of acting in the interests of future generations and planning for future generations. And I think that there's an opportunity to develop these themes further, but to develop them with citizens and do as the local government report recommends, to set wellbeing goals and priorities each term in conjunction with community, hapu, iwi and Maori, which is supported by a commitment from central and local government to align wellbeing priorities and agree place-based investment plans. That to me is just inherently sensible. And this type of joined up outcome approach could enable locally determined vision to be delivered by local agencies in the context of an overall long-term plan and vision. There we are, we need that vision, because without foresight or vision, the people will be lost. Putting wellbeing at the centre of council's day-to-day work will require them to use all of their existing relationships, infrastructure, assets and levers to unlock greater community wellbeing and build our whole vision around creating that resilience in the first place. And for the citizens on the receiving end of services that aren't joined up, or there's not a collaborative approach, they really get a bum deal. So there is a power in partnership. They say that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Have a conversation with citizens and ask them what it is that they want, but don't ask them necessarily what it is they want now. Ask them, get them into that space of being good ancestors. So I talked about the social partnership at a national level, and then this partnership at a local level. So on every local authority footprint, there is something called public services boards, which have statutory duties to come together to undertake wellbeing assessments of their areas, to look at the short, medium and long-term wellbeing issues for their areas, to put in place wellbeing plans, and those wellbeing plans identify the collective actions they are going to take to reach the 7 wellbeing goals. This is about how making sure we are walking in the shoes of the people that we're trying to design services for. I do think it's the role of local government to ensure that we're bringing communities together, not just in the way that we respond to crises, although, as I said, that's increasingly important, but to convene and build with communities local resilience, make that a core part of your purpose, understanding how we can work with local communities to make them more resilient, but also how we can work with local communities to perhaps see some of the opportunities that will be coming our way. As I said, I think this is all common sense. Wherever you start, you should look to do the things that are going to make the biggest contribution to the 7 wellbeing goals, and you should avoid doing the things that are going to take you back to business as usual. So what we are saying is we're taking a purposeful decision to say we are going to change our trajectory towards those 7 wellbeing goals, and we're going to shift our investment towards things which are better for well-being. The final thing that I want to sort of leave you with is about the system. Let's stop just picking up the pieces. Let's get up front of these problems and let's work together. Have a lot of arguments with abominable no men, and actually, challenge them, because they will tell you it can't be done. They'll find all the reasons why it can't be done. So my final lesson is never think that you are too small. As individuals, our actions add up. As leaders, of course, our decisions will play out for decades and sometimes centuries to come. So yes, you can think big. You can think that the impossible is possible. You can believe that with a bit of bravery and a bit of collective action, leaving the world better than we found it is entirely possible.
Thank you, Isabel. So there you have it. That presentation was actually well over an hour, so I got that down to 6.5 minutes. But out of that, the key message for me that came out of that is the way that we can move forward and fix or address so many of our problems that we face is by building a more cohesive community, working together, not just all coming from the top down, but sometimes from the bottom up. So hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. You would like to ask a question? Yes, that's fine. Councillor Maxwell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, thanks very much, Councillor Patterson. I enjoyed what you presented when we had our workshop out at Sion. Even that was brief, but seeing it in video form and the photographs, thank you for bringing that forward to us, and thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, this is a council meeting and you allowed it to be presented in that here, which I think is good, even for our own public to think. But it was really a thanks. But if it's a question, the slides that were presented, was that how people thought with like the ambulance at the bottom of the hill? And,
yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. It certainly was a worthwhile conference, and many of the people who were there commented that those who have been to other LGNZ conferences, it was one of the best ones they've ever been to as well. So it was a pleasure to have yourself there as well as Councillor Kiriopa too. So thank you very much. We will now move on to our next item on the agenda, which of course is a very exciting one for us. And that item is, of course, the declaration of Jennifer Rothwell. Before we do that, may I please ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report, declaration by Lakes Community Board member Jennifer Rothwell be received. That's moved by Councillor Wang, seconded by Councillor Lee. All those in favour to receive that report, please say aye. Thank you. Now, before I invite you up, I would just like to share a few words and also just put into context what we're about to do this morning. I also acknowledge that we have our chairperson of the Lakes Community Board here in attendance and support, Phil Thomas. Thank you for being here. So what we're about to do this morning is, of course, take the declaration from Jennifer Rothwell. Now, this does come from a resignation of Stephanie George from the Lakes Community Board, which triggered the by-election. Now, nominations for positions on both the Lakes and Rural Community Boards opened up on the 26th of July and closed on the 23rd of August. And as there was one nomination received for the Lakes Community Board, Jennifer was elected unopposed. So while she didn't stand in the previous elections, she has been a valued member of the Lakes Community Board between the years 2019 and 2022. And during that previous term, Jennifer actually helped a lot with solving issues like rubbish dumping and assisted with many projects that did benefit the Lakes communities. So she has been chairperson of the Hamurana Community Association and a member of the Lakes Water Society Committee. Lakes Water Quality Society Committee. We also want to welcome Jennifer's husband, Roy Veal. Roy is here today supporting Jennifer and the work undertaken by the Lakes Community Board, but he is, as you may tell by his stunning uniform, he is the Assistant Commander with Fire and Emergency New Zealand and the manager of the specialist courses at FENZ National Training Centre here at Eastgate. The centre trains both volunteers and paid staff from recruitment to officer level, and FENZ supports the Rotorua economy by providing 27,000 bed nights a year and thousands of flights in and out of Rotorua. So we also thank and welcome you, Roy, while you're here. So thank you for being here. It's now my pleasure to invite Jennifer up. We'll come to the front here. Jennifer will read her declaration and we will officially sign you in. What we're going to do is you read that one, and then I'll get you to sign.
Right. I, Jennifer Rothwell, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interests of the Rotorua Lakes community the powers, authorities and duties vested or imposed upon me as a member of the Rotorua Lakes Community Board by virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987 and any other act.
And you are officially a Lakes Community Board member.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Congratulations. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Jennifer. It is a pleasure to have you back on board with the team again. What I'd actually like to propose is if we could take a very short break now with Jennifer and Roy and just perhaps have a very brief morning tea and a cup of tea with them to congratulate and celebrate this very special occasion. So we are incredibly pleased to have you on board. Perhaps I'll suggest that we take about 15 minutes and we can return at 10:05. Thank you. a short break while we celebrate with our new Lakes Community Board member. We're now back to our council agenda. Just letting the council know that we will just defer the adoption of council's annual report for the year ended 30th of June just to the end of the meeting. We're just awaiting final confirmation from the auditors. So we'll pause that towards the end of the agenda and we will go straight to page 17, the financial performance for the 2 months ending 31st of August. This is information only. So that's page 17 to page 23. I'll call for a mover and a seconder for the motion. Financial performance for 2 months ended 31st of August 2023 be received. Moved by Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And I'd now like to invite Thomas Collet and David Jensen to overview this report. And I understand you have a presentation?
Yes.
Cool. And speak to their presentation as well.
Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, elected members. So this report covers the first 2 months of the financial year, being to the end of August 2023. One button.
Bring it in again, please.
Sorry. Trigger happy with the buttons. Here we go. So, as at the end of August 23, Council has a surplus of $2.3 million versus a budgeted surplus of $3.9 million. The primary difference is around the, as we discussed at length last year, around the timing of the capital subsidies. The income is displaying behind budget year to date because just where we're phased with the capital program year to date, we have not triggered those milestones for those capital subsidies to be paid, particularly around the museum, particularly around the aquatic centre, and as a result, we are waiting for there's a timing difference for when council can expect that revenue to come in. On the expenditure side, council is $979,000 below budget year to date. Across most expense categories, just reflecting where we are in the financial year and the fact that we're building into our work program for the year, and those two numbers combined mean that council we do have a operating surplus at the moment of $850,000. With regards to our capital expenditure, we are behind budget year to date, so we've spent $14.3 million against a year to date budget of $21.4 million, and we are building into the construction season, expecting that number to increase over the next several months as we come into summer and those capital works get underway properly. Council's net debt at the end of August was $333.9 million. That's very consistent with the balance at the end of the financial year at 31 June, so not a lot of movement over the first 2 months. When Council adopted the annual plan for this financial year, there is forecast borrowing of $65 million to enable the capital works program. However, we have not drawn down year to date on that balance. Within that variance, we can see that we are behind budget on our capital subsidy revenue. So, as I mentioned before, just timing where when that capital works will occur, we're triggering us to draw down on those subsidies. However, that number is offset by the fact that our development contribution revenue is marginally ahead of budget year to date, and we do have an operating surplus at the moment of $850,000. I think there's a couple of things that we will be monitoring over the next several months. So we are aware that we are doing a bit of work around the commercialisation of Shimpact and understanding what that means for our budgets for the rest of the year. We also know that just keeping an eye on the user fee targets we have for things like the event centre, and for Shimpact, just understanding that. Depending on how the financial year goes, some of those numbers may be under pressure, just depending on how successful some of those bookings are and those targets for getting numbers in through the door through the event centre and through Shimpak, and also importantly around the decision of committee to invest in our community safety, just understanding what impact that has on our numbers for the rest of the financial year. But at this current point, we do have an operating surplus of $850,000. And lastly, just a bit of a breakdown of where we've been spending our capital money over the last 2 months. So $14.3 million against a full budget year to date of 21.4. Our full year capital budget is 136 million, which is challenging, but we'll be updating council through the rest of the financial year as we move through that construction season and get underway with a lot of those works that are scheduled for later in the year. I'm happy to take the rest of the report as read and take questions on the report or the presentation.
Thank you very much, David. Any questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you for your report, gents. Just on page 20, the operating expenses under the heading of admin expenses, why is it 304K behind budget?
I mean, I think it's important to note that we are only 2 months into the financial year, so there's not a lot of there is a lot of water to come under the bridge through the remaining 10 months. We are expecting that to catch up to budget by the end of the year. It's just timing on where those budgets are phased and the expenses as they come in through the rest of the financial year. With the admin expenses, that is likely to be a timing difference.
Thank you. Just a couple more. And then we're only 81K underspent on staff costs. So, is that due to the unfilled vacancies?
There will be an element of unfilled vacancies, elements of turnover, even things like when we are a little further advanced through the capital works program. There are salaries that we pay for that we capitalise as we finish assets and we build that cost into the assets. So there'll be a mixture of roles that we're recruiting for, and also with the timing of when we capitalise some of those salaries.
So we can obviously expect that to change down the track.
We don't budget for that to change. We're not currently forecasting a significant variance.
Okay. And then, no, that's right. That's next. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Barker.
Thank you, guys. It was just a quick question regarding the presentation. Actually, you mentioned in the stormwater expenses something around land drainage. What sort of things are captured in that? It was the last page of your presentation.
So the land drainage will relate to the stormwater capital works program. It's a combination of supporting some of the CIP funded projects around retention dams. There's also the IAF pool of funds that we're drawing on, as well as any renewal work, and that the team support that. So that's a combination of quite a few projects that support stormwater infrastructure.
Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, Your Worship, there was one just in your corridor, David. You talked about currents. I think this slide showed that we're sitting at 339 million. Is that where we're sitting at? But then you mentioned something you were budgeted to draw down another 65 million. So is that going to be added on top of that figure, or is that included in the 339?
No, that $339 is council's net debt at the end of August. So gross debt is about 350 million, less cash on hand of 10, say. That number in the annual plan is scheduled to increase by 65 million. We are scheduled to borrow that over this current year to support the capital works program, and that would be in addition to what's shown.
So we can expect that to rise to over 400 million?
Correct.
Right, thank you.
I just have a question regarding the fees and charges. Just a little bit concerning around the lower than forecast sales at the Energy Events Centre and Sir Howard Morrison Performing Arts Centre, 324,000 lower than budget. Just a question, is there been anything of significance that has changed from this time compared to last year, or is that just reflecting that July and August are a quieter period and that's forecast over a 1 year duration?
Your Worship, there's a combination of things. So, and what we do anticipate is we don't expect to achieve budget in our fees and charges lines for the Energy Event Centre or the Performing Arts Centre for this year, and the team will try and work as much as possible to make sure that that gap is small. So what we are seeing is in the event-based sector, bookings are coming a lot later. Ticket sales as well are happening a lot later. Some shows, because of profitability elsewhere in the country, are choosing now not to carry the risk of holding shows elsewhere. So we're not seeing some of those larger commercial shows travelling around the country as much. And so the team are trying to work through options of how to manage that. So that's one of the things that is impacting the Performing Arts Centre. It's not just us, it's across New Zealand. It seems to be probably in a response to the country's response to probably the cost of living at the moment, and people are choosing to do things later and respond later, or not choosing to do things. In the Energy Event Centre space, it's tied to the relationship we have with our caterer, and it's a different commercial arrangement than what we previously had. And so the commissions that are being paid are a lot less than what was probably expected and budgeted for previously. And so we're just working with the caterer on a strategy of that going forward. The utilisation of the EEC is pretty good, and there's a lot of interest in it, but the key is more getting some of those larger conferences that attract a lot of people and they do spend a significant amount of money coming in. And what we are seeing as well with obviously the new facilities coming on board in Christchurch and Wellington, and they're pricing themselves quite competitively to attract we are still getting a good amount of volume, but there is more opportunity there. One of the reasons why people still choose to go have conferences in Rotorua is because of the fact that it is Rotorua and in and around the things that attendees can do outside of the conferences. So there is still that attraction there. But as we did talk previously, and I think in another committee meeting, around giving that facility a little bit of a refresh and setting itself up for the future will help cement its position in the market as well. But we do anticipate quite a bit of pressure in that area going forward, which is probably more reflective of the current economic cycle in New Zealand more than anything.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the Chair, thank you, gentlemen, for your reports. Could I just ask, I see we're behind, and we were last year, regarding the development contributions. Now, I presume, obviously, the economic cycle, higher interest rates are affecting, but how much longer do you anticipate that affecting? Would you assume that the money coming in over the next couple of years will also be on the smaller side, again, because of the current conditions? Thank you.
Yep, sorry for the confusion, Councillor, but we're actually ahead of budget in development contributions for this year. What we are seeing is probably some significant developments that have occurred, and I think one of them you've made a decision on recently around providing access into a retirement village that will trigger significant development contributions. So we are now starting to see them come in. You'll recall the discussions, or probably more the previous council was, we know that when the development contribution policy was reintroduced and we gave a start date, we saw a flood of applications before that due date. And so if you got your application in, it didn't trigger the development contributions policy. And we're now starting to see those push through, and all the new developments that are coming through, if they fall within the catchments, are now being captured. So just remember as well that if those developments or development activity doesn't occur, then also that expenditure that we do on growth infrastructure also doesn't occur and trigger. And so while the revenues might be down, then also the corresponding expenditure should also be down. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Whilst I heard the explanation to the question from Her Worship the Mayor, can I say, I looked at the 324,000 and I thought, wow, because I've been trying to get a booking in this Harold Wilson Centre September, October, November, right through to December. And there was hardly a booking that I could line up to get what these people wanted. So did we start late, too late, and there must be another reason for that amount, why it's higher than what we think it is when the bookings are so good in the building.
Yes, so one of the challenges we have in the Performing Arts Centre is the community rate. So we have two rates, one for commercial events and one for community rates. And what we are seeing is quite a high number of bookings at the community rate. And in particular, when community events are booked into there, you can't just book it out for the day that the event is there. They have obviously paid discounted rates before and after with regards to packing in and packing out. Yeah. And setting itself up. And so one of the decisions that will come to you shortly is probably around how do we appropriately manage the discounting for community events and finding that right balance between commercial events and community events. And so obviously the more commercial events we get in there, it's easier for us to achieve that revenue target, but then that obviously closes the door for the community use, and obviously it's a wonderful community facility, and so the team are currently working on a strategy which will be presented to you shortly with options around how to find and manage that right balance.
Hopefully we don't penalise the community rate, because we do want our own community to enjoy the beautiful facility we've all waited for. An example being the Miss Rotorua was held recently, but it's always been held in other buildings around Rotorua, and was the best event that they've had for a long, long time, being held in the centre, and got us a lot of kudos from that. But I hear what you're saying, but we do need that rate to ensure that we're giving something back to our own community. Kia ora. Yep.
Thank you. There appear to be no further questions. Thank you very much, David and Thomas. We now move on to our progress reports. We start with our corporate services. This is on page 23 of your agenda. I'd like to call for a mover and a seconder for the motion that the progress report corporate services be received. That's moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Thomas to overview it.
I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions that the members may have.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Thomas. Page 25, geyser view. That sounds interesting. The urban imagery capture, it says up-to-date. Is that up-to-date satellite imagery?
No, Councillor, it's actually aerial photography. So, and what it does is it provides significantly more detail than what Google Maps provides. So on our website, anyone in the community can actually have access to that. And so every 3 years, there's a cycle of an airplane flying through the district and taking high quality photography, and then putting that into place with regards to geyser view. So it's something that every council in New Zealand does. And so that what that does do is therefore, with regards to using geyser view to look at your property and see where pipes are and all those sorts of things, you have much higher quality across the district than Google Maps, as an example.
Right. So it said that it's going to happen again this summer for even more up-to-date.
Yeah, I think we're into the new cycle of updating that imagery, yes. Yep.
Fantastic. And that's all tied in with one council?
So the geyser view platform has been transitioned from a new old legacy system now into one council, yes.
Fantastic. Great news. Also on the CCTV expansion, I understand there's a review underway for additional sites to be chosen. I'd just like to raise again that the people from the East Side community, whether it be Tenai Shops or some other location, are keen to be included in that corridor. That's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Thomas, for the report. I'd just like to ask a question around the people and organisational development on page 27 of the current and ongoing work around the Affordable Waters program and the reform that's going on and the work that's been done to transition employees. Could you just give a bit more detail around what's happening there in our organisation, please?
Not too much recently, but a few months ago, quite a bit of work had gone through identifying staff that fell within the realm of being transferred, and there was rules and mechanisms put in place, and all staff that were affected attended workshops and had discussions with regards to what their future employment could look like, which was effectively lifting and shifting their terms and conditions. Also, those staff that knew that they weren't affected had discussions as well. And so it was quite an in-depth process around if this continues on, and we have to work on the assumption that it is, that we're starting to have discussions with affected staff and having dialogue with them with regards to what that transition looks like. It's gone a little bit quiet at the moment, but there was quite a burst of work recently.
Thank you. I just see there was some intention about finalising that in this month. And the NTU is to confirm their final transition pathways. Has that all been done?
There's a little bit quiet from the NTU at the moment, and probably understandable with what might be taking place next month.
Thank you.
Being the general election, yep.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Thomas, just a few questions around One Council. Just first of all, a shout out to the IT staff. It seems that the transition to the new system's gone remarkably smoothly for such a major transition. I noticed we had some media attention recently that used the word upgrade in the headline. I would have thought this was actually a whole new system more than an upgrade, isn't it?
It was a full replacement of a number of core legacy systems. Yes, it was. I guess you could say that the new systems provided quite a significant upgrade in capability.
Well, it's an upgrade in capability.
But yes, it was a full replacement.
It's a whole brand new system, isn't it? So I think the headline is just a wee bit misleading there. The budgetary cost of it, of course. It's worth observing that other councils tried to implement this and didn't get across the line as our team did. From memory, which of those councils? Could you help me with that?
Sure. Look, first of all, I enjoy the attention that we're getting from One Council. Just for the record, one of the things I never wanted to do in my career was an ERP replacement, because they are generally career killers. And so what I am proud of is the team that they've actually have delivered it. And while there are little things that we are resolving, we have managed to replace a number of legacy systems to a more modern one. And I'll let people judge the amount that we've spent. There are a number of neighbouring councils that were meant to go ahead of us and haven't, and have spent more. And I think recently in the news, there is a council in Australia that has spent 122 million and has abandoned. So I guess I'll leave it to you to draw your attention. All I will say is that, yes, it was a significant amount of work. We had a big team in place, and the team did a wonderful, fantastic job. It is delivering. As you'll see with any software changes, there are things that need to be fixed and tidied up at the end of it. But I'm incredibly proud and pleased of where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I concur. It's a success story, and that was got the project over the line. In fact, I've had my first play with the system using the cemetery system, which is available, I think, online for finding out where loved ones may be buried if that's lost.
Yep.
Is there any ongoing consideration to how this council could monetise and productise the configurations that we have implemented for the benefit of other councils, and perhaps assist other councils in saving the costs that might otherwise be incurred?
Oh, there possibly could be, councillor, as we said. I think the challenge there is, from a local government perspective, we are always helping each other out. And so even while we were doing the work on going live for one council, Taupo, who is also undertaking a similar process, we actually already gave them all our information and shared everything we were doing for free, and that's just one of the ways that local government New Zealand works closer together. So I'm not too sure on how to monetise or commercialise that aspect of it. Another recent example would be Auckland City Council with their SAP implementation, which I'm not too sure how many hundreds of million that cost, but substantial. They gave it to Tauranga City Council, and Christchurch City Council, I think, might have leveraged off it as well. And so from a local government perspective, we are in the spirit of sharing and collaborating where we can, versus maybe from a commercial environment trying to commercialise it. But if the opportunity arises, I'm more than happy to explore it. But it's a little bit hard to find that at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a noble, it's rather noble that local governments work cooperatively, but this is an awful lot of money and perhaps a little bit worthy of closer consideration on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Thomas. I just want to ask a question on cyber security and things like that. There seems to be a spike out there in the business world. I mean, we're in business too. Are we pretty much on top of it? I've read your report that's in there.
Yes, so I won't go into specifics in an open environment, but what we did do is we had quite a deep dive at last week's or the week before's Audit and Risk Committee. And I think, councillors, that paper is probably available to you through Stella if you wish to view it. And we had quite a lengthy presentation from staff and discussion around the mechanisms and tools and that we have in place. And I'd appreciate, I'm not too willing to talk about it in a public forum, but the feeling I got, or the impression I got, was that the Audit and Risk Committee were endorsed our approach and were comfortable with the measures that we had in place.
Thank you. Any further questions? There appear to be... Oh, nope, there appear to be none. Thank you very much, Thomas. We now move to our next progress report. We are on corporate planning and governance from page 29 to page 37. May I please have a mover and a seconder that the progress report, corporate planning and governance, be received? Moved by Councillor Kai Fong, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Thank you. I now invite Una Hopkins to overview this report.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I will just take the report as read, but I just would like to do a bit of a shout out. You will have read it in your reports, but for those that may be watching online, just want to do a bit of a shout out to the RLC design team, who have been noted as finalists in the Best Design Awards for 2023, and that's in recognition of all of their work on the Sir Howard Morrison and its visual identity. So congratulations to the team. They're very proud of their work there, and we wish them all the best in those award ceremonies. And so I'm happy to take any questions on anything else contained in my part of the report.
Thank you very much, Una, and some excellent achievements there to note. Any questions? Councillor Patterson.
Just a quick one. When are those awards?
I believe they're around about the 5th, 6th of October. I can get those dates confirmed, though.
Fantastic. Fingers crossed.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the Chair, thank you, Una, for the report. Forgive me, I have asked previously, and I just want to check, as it was, I believe, in confidential, the Ombudsman's report. Will we have a report to Council at perhaps, say, next month's meeting or the one after? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. I can give a bit of an update on that. It was intended that the final Ombudsman report would be presented to Parliament. That is the process that that office has to go through in terms of any of the reviews that they undertake. That hadn't been presented to Parliament by the time Parliament finished up for this term. The Ombudsman then did a presentation at a governance forum, which was held down in Wellington as part run through Rotorua. And in that presentation, he did make reference to the fact that his office have undertaken a review. But where he is at the moment is that he is looking to compile a thematic report based on all of his findings from across the 8 councils that he has reviewed, and then that would be presented. So I haven't had any further clarification from his office in terms of when the final report is going to be published on his website. I guess that will have to wait until Parliament resumes. And in the meantime, his office will be continuing to work on a thematic report, which I'm taking from that will turn into another one of the Ombudsman's guidance papers, which their office does put a number of guidance reports out, covering all sorts of things that local government and government undertake. So expecting to see that.
Thank you for that. So can I just clarify, so the draft one that we have at the moment is still confidential, is that correct?
That's correct,
Thank
yes.
you.
Any further questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, reading your report, Una, it appears Facebook is the most effective tool for reaching out to the community and letting them know what we're up to. Instagram, not so much, but perhaps that's a reflection that. Yeah, what would that be a reflection of? Perhaps you can.
Oh, my expert marketing and comms advisor isn't here. That's probably a question for her. Facebook, I think, traditionally has been our channel used in council. We are growing the other channels. I think we are seeing a bit of an increase in Instagram, and the digital channels that the team are hoping are going to go from strength to strength. So just noting there too that council have already put out a couple of TikToks. So we're joining the TikTok journey, and that's an area where council are looking to connect with our community as well through that channel.
Excellent. Got to reach out to those young people and get them interested in what we're doing, don't we? Thank you very much.
And on that note, can I also just thank the staff for their very innovative way that they are looking at communicating with our community. It's been great not only to see great content being put out there for them, but also the responsiveness that they have to people's concerns, which of course traditional ways is you call up or you walk in between 9 to 5, but there is such a higher demand and expectation from the community that they constantly grapple with. So we do acknowledge the team of the team at Marketing and Communications. Were there any further questions on this report? There appear to be none. So we'll move on now to our progress report for Te Aroha Partnerships. May I please have a mover and a seconder for the motion, Progress Report Te Aroha Partnerships, be received. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Gina Rangi to overview her report.
Tēnā tātou ia kui rangatira. From here on in, I will, well, for the time being, while I'm in my acting role, I will be appointing someone to provide the reports to in the future. But given that I wrote this report, I'll present this one. Probably the main thing I wanted to highlight for this month is the review of the partnership agreement with Te Tatau. So you've established a working group. There have been a number of meetings. In the period that we're reporting on, there was one meeting on the 11th of August. Progress has been slow. The facilitator has spent some time talking to us individually and sort of encouraging us to develop our thinking. So there has been some proposals and sort of options have been discussed between the parties, and we're expecting our next meeting on the 13th of October. So hopefully we'll be able to report further at the next council meeting on how things are going. I would describe it as positive, although it's slow. Are there any questions, please?
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you, Gina, for your report. One thing jumped out at me, the Te Arawa exhibition, the museum there, working on the B Company exhibition is underway. How will that differ from the new 28th Māori Battalion Museum that's being planned for Northland?
That one is focusing on the company for that area, which I think is A Company, and there's also a C Company museum in the on the east coast. I'm not familiar with what the themes and the key messages will be. What we do know is that that was one of the most popular exhibitions in the previous, when the museum was previously open, and we expect it will continue to be. It's not only the national conversation about the war and what that meant to us, but also the descendants of and the families of soldiers particularly find that very moving. So we'd expect a similar approach, talking about the contribution that our district made to the war effort, but also not just those who went away, but those who stayed here at home. But the detail of that is being fleshed out. That is primarily being led by the B Company Trust, who are sort of the guardian of a lot of that information and a lot of the taonga.
Fantastic, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Gina, for your report. Just a general kind of question. We get a number of staff reports which make references such as mana whenua have been consulted. It strikes me that those kind of references aren't all that helpful, in that there's no identification of who the mana whenua is. I think one recent report did have some identification of that. But in the normal course of events with public consultation, we would have, say, a submission from a member of the public. Maybe it would be helpful if mana whenua are consulted. We could have a bit of, some kind of submission from them and signed off by somebody who actually articulates that viewpoint.
It would depend on what level of engagement you have, and so Una's team, they hold what's called a significance and engagement policy, which is approved by the councillors as part of the LTP, and that describes how you will carry out an engagement, and there is a range of engagement. It can be from informing people through to empowering them to make a decision. So the level of engagement will depend on where and the type of methods and techniques that are appropriate for a particular project. I think we certainly can provide more clarity around which groups have been engaged with. But there should always be, when you receive a report, it should always talk about the type of engagement, and that will always be consistent with, or should always be consistent with, your significance and engagement policy. So you should be able to read the policy and see how it's been applied for a particular project. And that there's a section in each of those decision-making reports where it talks about significance and engagement, and that section relates to the policy.
Do we have situations where mana whenua are consulted but the public aren't?
I'm sure there would be. For example, if it was something that was only relevant to mana whenua, then you would only go and talk to the relevant groups, but it's sort of at a theoretical level, that's all I could say.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, but generally, you should be talking to anybody who is affected by a council decision. The level, it will depend on the importance of the project, the level of impact. So all of those things staff have to assess in deciding who and when to engage and how.
Yeah, I'm just fishing in the pond of transparency, so for everybody's benefit. But thank you very much.
And remembering mana whenua are the public. Often in these cases, they are also the landowners or resource owners, of which we must consult under our requirements in the Local Government Act and RMA. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Gina, I just wanted to say page 39, acknowledge Te Amorangi providing all the technical advice. It was good getting the report to see all the good mahi that they're providing out there, especially in the civil defence emergency management area too, because we really haven't had a great year from the weather, from everything. And we're one of the lucky communities in a sense when you measure it up against Tairāwhiti East Coast and Hawke's Bay and that. But no, good to see the Te Amorangi unit well engaged. Kia ora.
And just noting that we are not the lead agency for that, so we provide the support to the team that is, but it's important to Te Amorangi that we provide assistance around engaging with marae in particular, because we know that Māori communities have particular needs in an emergency, and also Māori communities are often the people who take in at short notice large groups. And so making sure that we have good relationships and that those are reciprocal relationships is really important.
Thank you very much. Well, there appear to be no other questions, so we'll conclude that. And we also thank Gina for her work and her presentation of Te Aroha Partnerships. We're very much looking forward to her support in her role as our Acting Chief Executive in the interim. We will be going out for recruitment very shortly for our full-time Chief Executive, but we look forward to your support and your experience advising us. Now, what I suggest we do is we actually adjourn and take a break. We are just awaiting confirmation from Audit NZ. They had one very minor issue to resolve before they could provide confirmation, and we would like them present in the meeting. So we expect that to come through at 12:30. So we will have quite a break. There is morning tea in the green room for us now, but we do also have a lunch break at 12 o'clock, which is why I suggest 12:30. So for those live streaming and for our staff, I will adjourn the meeting and see you again at 12:30. And apologies for the slight inconvenience. However, we will be able to get through all of the agenda then. Thank you. us to adjourn the meeting while we wait for confirmation of the annual report. I'd now like to call for a mover and a seconder for the motion that the report adoption of Council's annual report for year ended 30th of June 2022 be received. Moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Kai Fong. All those in favour to receive the report, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. I'd now like to also acknowledge that joining us via Zoom is also our team from Audit New Zealand. We also have Leon Petersar there as well. Kia ora, Leon. Kia ora. Catch, I think it was. Yep, thank you. So to start off, I'd now like to invite Thomas Collard to overview the report and also speak to a presentation that he has, and joining him, of course, is David. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and welcome back, and welcome, Audit. This brings together to the close, I think, the saga of the 2022 annual report. You'll recall this item has been lying on the table since June, and we've had to do a bit of work since then to clear a few things up. The report itself is obviously pre your time, so it relates to 30th of June 2022, which obviously was a year that finished 3 months before the election cycle, and many of you were in place. But as normal, we do ask the incoming council to adopt the annual report. I think as we discussed back at June, we've had a number of challenges with regards to the preparation of the annual report. And in particular, what we've experienced in the finance team itself was a high turnover of staff, and in particular the team that prepares the annual report. I think, as David mentioned to me the other day, we had those staff turnover twice in the space of a 12-month period. So it did create some unique challenges. In addition to that, obviously, I think Audit had some resourcing challenges as well, and there's a combination of the two that unfortunately have led to where we are. It's pleasing, though, that the audit opinion is an unmodified audit opinion, and hopefully you've all seen the management report as well that was tabled to Audit and Risk a couple of weeks ago, and in that audit report is there's no real significant issues to resolve, and there's a number of issues that the sector faces, in particular around fixed assets and revals that we're all working towards to improve. But it is pleasing to see that it is an unmodified audit opinion, which, as I think Leon will tell to you shortly, that there are no material misstatements and that the financial statements are accurate and free from material errors. There is a matter of emphasis that's been included, and a matter of emphasis is where the audit bring to the attention of the reader certain things, and in this case it does draw the attention of the reader in particular around Three Waters reform, and so all councils currently are having the same thing included, and as we go into our LTP, it'll likely have something similar as well, subject to where things go into the future. So it's not unexpected to have a matter of emphasis to draw the attention to the fact that there is water reform currently underway, and that may have a material impact with regards to the future. The key changes that have resulted from the version that we provided in June to now is just a small change in recognising the timing of Crown Infrastructure Partner capital subsidies, change in fixed assets, in particular around some revaluations and the impact on depreciation. The significant change probably was the prior period adjustment, which we found where within the equity section of our annual report, the equity section is simply broken down between retained earnings and reserves, and what we found was from year to year, as the software was rolling balances forward, it was incorrectly rolling the movements and some of the reserves into retained earnings rather than into the equity section. And so we've been working with PricewaterhouseCoopers to rectify that. The software that we use is PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we've had to make a prior period adjustment to reflect that change. not a material change, obviously, to the overall balance sheet and the profit and loss in the end of year result, but it is a change within the equity section. And then we made some changes as well to the group accounts, and that's obviously the reflection of the intercompany transactions and eliminations with Infracore, Rotorua NZ, and the airport. I think I've talked a little bit before, but just on some of the issues that we've experienced, and predominantly there was the high staff turnover that the team faced. Changeover of knowledge and a couple of other aspects. IT systems, particularly around we ran into quite a significant challenge around the wastewater performance measures, and I think we've mentioned that before, around giving audit the information they needed to be able to tick off to say that our understanding that we were meeting our timely response for wastewater breakages, giving them the underlying data to support that. And that took actually quite some time to actually resolve that issue. And I think, as I explained before, the main challenge that we had was as the software was going from as the information was being transferred from one software into another, one of the fields was wrong, and so the data that was in the software that we were reporting out of to audit wasn't being reconciled, and so we had to redo quite a significant amount of work to provide them with evidence to support that, and they're comfortable with that. And so those two were probably, and then the change in the equity section were the three challenges that we've experienced towards the end. So it's very pleasing that they've been resolved, and we don't anticipate those affecting us again going forward. So I'll leave it there, and what I might do is hand over to Leon, and then happy to have any questions after that. So just for the record too, Leon has been our audit director for 5 years, and this is his last audit. And as we know, David Walker from Audit New Zealand is replacing him. So welcome, Leon.
Kia ora, Thomas. Tēnā koutou katoa. The sound is really bad, so we probably didn't hear everything Thomas was saying, but he did steal my thunder a bit. Everything I had on my list to talk to you about, he's already mentioned to you. The issues experienced during the audit, and I'm glad to hear that those will be addressed for the 2023 audit, but as he said, I won't be part of that audit team. I know you had a long meeting and not a full agenda, so you probably don't want to listen to your auditor at this stage. Just before I give you a chance to ask me any questions you may have, I just want to ask you to confirm that you're not aware of any events or transactions that occurred since balance date, which is 30 June 2022 to today, that needs changes to the annual report or disclosure in the annual report. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you, Leon, and yes, happy to confirm that.
Yep.
We can send email confirmation to you as well, if required.
That would be great. Kia ora.
Thank you. So are there any questions regarding the annual report for either Thomas or Leon? And we do acknowledge that Katarana is also on Zoom with us. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just have in our agenda recommendation 4 that the Chief Executive be authorised to make minor editorial changes, if any, as agreed with the Council auditors. Is that still required?
No, not at this stage. It's a standard one we normally put in as to whether there's any little spelling mistakes or grammar or something. It allows us some flexibility around that, but it doesn't provide any flexibility for us to make any numerical or meaningful changes. So no.
Okay, second question. Rotorua Lakes Council has shown consistent financial management this past year with continued retention of our AA credit rating from Fitch. Are there other councils that have lost that credit rating? Or?
I don't know, Councillor. I don't keep track of what other councils' credit ratings do, unfortunately.
Would Leon be able to comment on that? Or?
No, I'm not aware of any. Sorry, I'm not meaning to say I'm not aware of any changes. I'm not aware of where other councils' credit ratings sat. I think I heard one of my clients mention that there was a change, but I unfortunately can't comment on that.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, increased under some challenges were new, including the Build Back Better initiative. What was that?
Got to remember back to 2022. Some of that was around challenging around responses to COVID. I think JP might recall what the Build Back Better initiatives were. I think a lot of that was around supporting housing, and as well as I think some community safety during that year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Well, there do appear to be none. This has been some time in the making, so councillors have been aware of the annual report coming. Obviously, and unfortunately there were delays in it, but we are very pleased to be able to adopt the audited annual report today. So if there were no further questions, I would ask for a mover and a seconder, and then if there is discussion, we can open up for that. I'll read the recommendations before us. That Council resolves to adopt the audited annual report and the audited summary for the Rotorua Lakes Council for year ended 30th of June 2022. That the Mayor and Chief Executive be authorised to sign the Letter of Representation and Statement of Compliance section of the annual report, and that the Chief Executive be authorised to make minor editorial changes, if any, as agreed with Council's auditors. May I please have a mover and a seconder for those? Moved by Councillor Kaifong, seconded by Councillor Wang, and this is open for discussion now if there were any comments. Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to thank Thomas and the rest of the team. It's been a challenging time, but it's good that we can put this behind us, and look forward to ensuring that we have a smooth process for the next annual report. So realise that there's been a lot of hard work put into this. I think David mentioned he's aged a few years, so hopefully we can reverse that grey hair and wrinkles this time round. And thank you, Thomas, to you and your team for the effort and work that you've put into this process as well. Thank you also to Leon, since this will be your last audit for us. We appreciated the work and time that you've put in, and the that you've come along to meetings and presented to us. And thank you, Kat, for the involvement of you as well. So just good to finally be able to put this one to rest, and more than happy to move the resolution on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd just like to support the words that Deputy Mayor Sandra Kaifong had mentioned, and also say thank you, Thomas. There's a paragraph on page 50, and I think for me sums it all up, and I think it's great if you don't mind me reading it. Rotorua Lakes Council has shown consistent financial management this past year with the continued retention of our AA credit rating from Fitch supporting this. That really sort of makes me feel good. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just going back to one of the comments about why there were some delays attributed to staff turnover during the writing of the report. Are we confident going forward that that's been addressed and is unlikely to happen again?
We do have one vacancy that's quite critical that we're looking to fill at the moment, but we have some good stability in that team now, and a new manager, and so we're, with the exception of that one vacancy, we're confident.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. There appear to be no further comments. Look, can I just echo the thanks to the team. Our finance team is incredibly valuable to us at Council, especially for not only ensuring that we stay within expected budget, but also in ensuring that we're forecasting responsibly for the future too. So we really appreciate the amount of time that went into getting this done. Thank you very much. And Leon, thank you very much for your service with us. We look forward to working alongside David in future. Thank you. So we do have a mover and a seconder for that. I've read them out. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our team from Audit NZ. I'm sure we will be in touch with you soon, and I will send email confirmation to you shortly, Leon. Thank you.
Kia ora, councillors.
Kia ora. So that concludes all of the items that we had on the agenda today. Once again, thank you for your patience as we deferred that until this midday. Now I will declare the meeting closed, but before that, I will invite Councillor Barker to please close our hui with a karakia.
Kia whakairea te tapu, kia wate ai te ara, kia turuku whakataha ai, kia turuku whakataha ai, haumie, huie, tai ki e.
Thank you. I now declare the meeting closed.